the first thing to realize is that, a radical change in your circumstances requires a radical change in your priorities. Now, you did not hear me say that your values change. Your values never change, but your priorities change. And I think if you're running or you're trying to run things the same way right now, you're getting pretty frustrated. And the best advice I can give you is to lean into what's happening, um, and reinvent. Right? Gary talked about basically what sabotages invention is how grounded we are in the way things were. In other words, we have this longing to um, go back to the way things were, and it stops us. It paralyzes us, and it puts us in neutral, and we play the waiting game. I'm reminded of that Dr. Seuss book, "Oh, the Places You'll Go," and the most terrifying place to ever be trapped is in the waiting room. If you remember that page from the book, the people who are just waiting and waiting and waiting. Um, so don't be anchored in the past. Look ahead to the people who are going to benefit from this is those who have the advantage of foresight, those that can look ahead and think of yourself as like a master chess player. An average chess player plays one move at a time. As you start developing your skills, you can see 2 and 3 and sometimes 5 moves in advance. A master chess player actually can see 10, 15, even 20 moves in advance. And that's how they make their decisions. A lot of this just requires you to spend some thinking time. And you time block thinking time just like you time block training time. But reinvention is going to be key here. The only way to predict the future is to create it. So I think we've all heard that before. Recession is another name for exposure. And realize what we're in right now is a depression. We've had this like sudden drop, right? And we'll head towards a recession. I mean, make no bones about it. We'll be in a recession. Hopefully, it's a short recession. We come out of it. And a recession is going to expose a lot of things. It'll expose people. It'll expose your money. It'll expose your systems. It'll expose your leaders. It'll expose everything in your business. And you just got to be mindful of that. What will the end of this be the start of for you? And start working on that right now. I love Michael Mayer in a previous training. He said, what happens if this quarantine is over before I'm ready? And I thought that was just a great reframing, because everybody's like, oh my God, like we got to get out of this thing. How quickly can we get out of this thing? And I think they're really smart people right now, because we're going to see a lot of invention and a lot, there will be a lot of businesses that are started in this time. I think the really smart people are focused on what happens on the outside and what am I doing right now to make sure that I'm the one that takes advantage of that and I'm not the one that's being taken advantage of, right? So he talked about surviving and thriving. And first of all, the key to surviving, number one, be safe and do the work. If you're safe, if you don't have safety and you don't have your health, you don't have anything, right? We've all heard that before. And when he says do the work, I believe what he's talking about here is it's okay if you feel like you're working twice as hard for half the result. Like, it's going to feel that way. In many cases, it's going to be that way. The good news is that there's a flywheel effect that will take place when you're doing the right things that actually will have a multiplier far greater than 2 times the result. So do the work simply means that get into action, make the plan, get into action, have somebody that holds you accountable, create accountability groups, get a coach, whatever you need to do the work, right? The second is margin to the market. So take your expenses to the limit. you've got to get, and hopefully you've done this by now in the last 30 days, but you got to make sure that the money coming in or the money coming out is equal to the money that's coming in. Getting to a neutral point would be a win at this point. Stabilization, so that you can then start building again. Um, and anytime, I've heard Gary say this a lot, is you're always building something. You're either building in production or you're building in systems. And so if you don't have the business maybe that you would like to have right now, what are you doing on the system side to prepare for it? It would be unacceptable for you to not be making progress on one or the other right now. But I wouldn't say, I don't want you to beat yourself up if you're, I don't have an appointment today. That's a good realization, self-realization that, okay, I need to be doing something different. But what kind of process do I need to create to ensure that that doesn't happen tomorrow? Number 3, stay connected. Service first, sales second. You heard that me say that on Sunday. I love that. The service first of this, it simply means your values are on display. You know, early on we were talking about you can't tell people how to feel right now. You can ask them how they're doing, right? Checkup call needs to start with how are you doing? But the only way that you could really influence anyone at this moment is share good news, and then let them interpret that as they will. But I think service first looks like, hey, do you have everything you need? Is there anything I can help you with? Can you be a connector for resources for people? Number 4, adapt your lead gen to the market of the moment. So who do you think is buying houses right now? Who do you think is selling houses right now?
People
And
that
how do you find them? Okay, Ray, go ahead.
people that have to move. They have to. They still have their jobs. Their job security is there. They have to move somewhere.
Yeah.
Or they realize their house is too small and they want to move.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
going to say, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Deborah.
I was going to say people with vacant houses. We've got a lot of vacant houses out there, whether they're for sale by owner, rehabbed properties, rental properties that aren't rented. There's a lot of empty properties.
Yep.
And they're sitting on payments for no purpose.
Yeah, think about your investor clients, and think about what we talked about. Cash is oxygen, and there's going to be opportunities on the other side of this. Maybe they've got a portfolio of rental properties, and it might make sense for them to dump some equity in order to have some cash, some oxygen for later on for perhaps better opportunities. So I think investors right now are a tremendous opportunity. Your first-time home buyers, right? First-time home buyers, y'all, was what got us through the last recession. Those people are always buying. I would go heavy on first-time home buyer seminars. Yes, it's going to affect your price point if you have a typically higher price point, but it's a lot better than zero, right? For most of us, the longer we've been in business, we've been building a price point thanks to just the economic condition of our database, right? Well, it's time for some of you to get reconnected with the younger generation. And that means getting with it, right? Getting with social media. That might mean if you've got a team, hiring a fresh college grad. These college grads that are coming out right now, they're in many cases, either they're super excited that they didn't have to finish a lot of their college, or they're super disappointed and they're, don't know where they're going to go. They don't know what they're going to do. Their plans just changed. And I believe there's a big opportunity for some of these recent college grads to, if you can afford to take on a project, to come into your world and bring a database that you can help them with and develop a strong business with first-time homebuyers. So yeah, adapting your lead generation to the market of the moment. I just want you to observe what's going under contract, right? Pull FMLS, and you'll observe that the average price point is generally not the luxury properties right now. So how do we pivot towards, more of a 250 to 500 market instead of a 750 to 1.5 market? Those would be important things for you to think about and consider. And then the last one under survive, which I thought he did a better job of describing this with the OPs, is you have to behave like an emergency room. And I want to unpack this a little bit because I thought it's a beautiful analogy that we can all relate to. Picture an emergency room and what all is going on in that place. To some, it probably looks like a place of chaos. And to most doctors that work in an emergency room, they thrive off that. Like they make the conscious decision to do that because they like it, right? But we have to behave like an emergency room. The first thing under this is you got to have extreme focus and intensity. You got to be focused. You got to pay attention to what's going on. The second is you got to have constant monitoring of vital signs. And the analogy that you'd use here, if you went to the emergency room for whatever symptom you had, they're not going to be testing you for your BMI, right? They're not going to be taking your cholesterol if you go into the emergency room. They're going to be looking at, all right, what's your pulse, right? What's your oxygen levels look like? What's your pain? What are your pain tolerance right now? They're looking at truly vital signs that help them make decisions. They don't make decisions off the small things. They make decisions off the big things. The third thing in acting and behaving like an emergency room is constant communication. And you've heard this from me a lot lately, because you probably have seen more than you ever wanted to see of me in the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks. But the point is that you have to increase communication. You've got to be that face in front of your people. They actually need to see your eyes, right? They need to see how you're feeling and that you have a plan. That is incredibly important. Make no mistake about it, you're leading your database right now. It just happens to involve real estate, right? Number 4, massive flexibility to changing conditions. So you have to be flexible. Everything changes on a dime. Right now, we're planning to go back into the offices on May 13th. Now, we haven't announced that to everybody yet, but we're working towards that, and it could change on a dime, right? We're monitoring that day by day. The point of that, though, is that if we don't have a plan and we're not working towards it, it's going to happen. It's going to take longer for the inevitable to happen, right? So we got to have a plan. It doesn't mean we can't change the plan, but we got to have a plan. And then number 5, speed of response matters. Now, I'm not going to go so far to say that your speed of how you respond to your business is life or death, but it could mean financial life or death. So your ability to recognize and change quickly, adapt quickly, is going to be, again, important for you to take advantage of what's about to happen instead of being taken advantage of for what's about to happen. So that's the survive side right now. That's the way that we should be behaving. On the thrive side, the first thing that Gary was saying about thriving is that you have to reset your vision. And for a lot of people, they had tremendous goals for this year. They had all the reasons in the world why this was going to be the best year of their career. And that's being challenged right now. And some people are struggling with that. And the point I would make here is that even if you don't have your best year, it should not mess up your career, right? You should be able to, you'll overcome this. And I don't want you to get too lost in one year. because I've certainly had my fair share of terrible years. Uh, you know, I've had years where I've made big money. I've had years where I've made hardly any money, and I've learned from both of them, right? Um, so resetting your vision just means you got to have short-term tactics. Back to that idea of having a 30-day plan. Um, take your 30-day plan, 3 points, 5 points, whatever it is, and look at it every day. And then once we hit June, make you another 30-day plan, right? Number 2 under Thrive is be lead gen based. That's a typical shift tactic, right? Marketing is important. However, in these uneasy times, lead gen is going to be the most important. And I guess we go back to our, adapting that lead gen to the market at the moment. Number 3, and I think this was important, make sure your education and training match your plan. So, in other words, training for the sake of training is a bad trade for you. Look at your plan to determine what it is that you need, and then seek out training that helps you develop those skills, improve those skills, develop those habits. Structure has been the gift of this whole thing for me. I mean, I'm exercising more than I've ever exercised. I mean, I had 45 minutes before this call. I'm looking at my watch because I exercise at least 30 minutes every day. And I'm like, can I go exercise and take a shower and be on this call by 11 o'clock? And I was like, yep, I can do it. Because I got to do it because I've got other stuff planned for the rest of the day. And if I wait until 5 o'clock, when, my willpower is not on will call, right? We know that. It'll never get done. So what is it that you need to get done, and how do you front load your day to make sure you get it done faster, not procrastinate on stuff? Number 4, under Thrive, model and margin to compete for your unfair share. Model simply means like, hey, who's having success right now? What are they doing? And how do I build margins in it that I can take profits? How do I adapt to make sure that, again, my expenses are less than my income? And how do I model good behavior, and take advantage of that? Number 5, take advantage of technology. The Peters Company is, we were accustomed to paying, oh gosh, probably $800 a month, $800 to $1,000 a month for database management. And when all this hit, we said, April 1st, we're going all in on command. I was tired of making excuses as to why we weren't in it. We knew it was going to be somewhat of a challenge, a learning curve. We've been immersed, with it. We just hadn't done it. And so we actually needed this shift to make us take advantage of that. So technology is your friend. And I made a comment to one of our regional calls. I said, we've been preparing the last 3 years for the next 3 months. And if we're not taking advantage of technology right now, if we're going to wait until things are just blowing and going to get into technology, we're going to miss out. We need to be taking advantage of this time that we're down right now. And maybe you're not down. Maybe you're killing it, which is awesome. High five. But we do need to take advantage. How do we get into command? And how do we learn everything that we need to do right now, to take advantage of it? Number 6, push your advantages. So when I think of advantages, when we talk about advantages, what is your superpower? Like, what is it that you do better than anybody else? And have you built your business around it? Is it really a strength that others see? And make that come alive in your business. I think now is a good time for you to reevaluate what your superpowers are.
Andy,
yeah.
Can you give us an example with yourself so that we can kind of look at ourselves introspectively?
Yeah, one of my superpowers is connectivity, connecting people, and as a result of that, I have a lot of relationships in a lot of different groups, and I've been connecting a lot of those friend groups. I've been connecting a lot of those, um, segments of the database, and yeah, I'm a connector. I'm a maximizer actually in StrengthsFinder. So maximizer has helped me in this situation. Like I want to maximize everything that I possibly can about this unfortunate situation, right? I want us to come out of it. And I think I shared this with some of y'all. Like my biggest fear is that we come out of it and somebody says, well, Andy didn't do everything he could to help us during this. Like that's actually what drives me. So, you know, what is it about you? What is it that you provide that is different using your unique gifts and talents? Sometimes you don't even realize what it is, and you have to ask somebody close to you, like, "Hey, this is like finding your why in many cases. Why would you say I do what I do?" And you're just racking your brain to figure that out. Um, you know, talk to your loved ones, talk to your best friends, talk to your business partners, talk to your colleagues. What do they hear you talking about? How do they see you behaving? And then how do you maximize that? How do you take advantage of that?
To maximize
That
that
makes,
during this pivotal time and in your lead gen, basically.
well, it's all about reinvention.
Okay.
So if you hadn't done this before, it's all about how do I reinvent myself using my strengths?
Got it.
If I've got an opportunity to kind of hit the reset button, and I'm not saying everybody's business is like blown to smithereens, because you look at the performance, that's clearly not what's happening. But it's definitely testing us, right? And I believe if you don't reinvent yourself right now, that you'll be left behind. Another example of that is, if you're really good, behind a camera, maybe you've always wanted to do a podcast. Maybe there's a new way of communicating with your database that you've always wanted to do, and you just never really made the time or made that a part of your plan to do it. Now would be a great time to do that.
Perfect.
So,
thank you.
yeah, and the last, the comment I made earlier about what do you want to begin at the end of this, um, I think would give you it would be a good thinking point for you on that. Number 7 is just be money smart, and I think we've already kind of beat that dead horse. But be money smart. Ask yourself if there's something you're about to buy, maybe wait a day and see if it's really something that you need. Um, the best example I can give of this is, our housekeepers are out. Like they haven't been to the house for 6 weeks, and that's a huge leverage thing in my world. Like I'll do with a lot of things before I'll do without a housekeeper. So Saturday's cleaning day, and all of us have jobs and chores. You know, I clean more toilets than anybody. That's my specialty. Um, and so one of the things, Leslie cleaned the shower, and she's like, Andy, how many things of shampoo do you have in the shower? I'm like, I don't know. I never really paid attention to it. She's like, you've got like 8 bottles of shampoo in here, because I would buy them and then I'd use part of them. And then, variety is the spice of life. Like I just use different shampoos. So there's now 2 levels of shampoo. One is kind of the standard, and then the others are like the, outliers. These are the ones you've got to use all of these before you use those. The freezer is being cleaned out. Right? There's food that I didn't even know existed, that has been repurposed and made into things that probably weren't even the intention of it in the first place. But we've got to learn to do more with less. And that's a good thing. That's a real good thing. You're going to find money in places you didn't know you had it. And it's not
Andy,
always just cash flow.
Yeah. Hey, Andy, it's Gina. one of the things that before COVID, we've been told to kind of reduce expenses and all of that. One of the things that I did was kind of refi my house because I had so much equity in it, and I reduced my expenses by $1,800. Like took off my car payment, paid off another house, and did a cash out refi and saved $1,800 because the interest that I was getting on a refi versus the interest I was paying on other investments.
Yep.
Helped save me $1,800 and still keep the same payment while doing the cash out refi. So paid off two large debts.
I think that's smart.
Always evaluate what you're paying out. Like even if your car insurance, your home insurance, keep shopping because you never know where you'll find money.
Yep. Yeah, we've canceled so many things and renegotiated so many things. And by the way, that's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of intelligence. And right now, I've been investing in market centers for the last 3 years, and I believe Leslie's going to kill me if I don't buy we don't buy a beach house. So we're actually looking at taking advantage of refinancing, and we're going to stay in cash because we believe there's going to be opportunities at the beach. So we're refinancing not only to save money in the short term, hopefully to save money for what it is that we want, hopefully in the not too distant future. So I think that's wise. All right, let's look here. What else is, the point was made, you can solve about any problem you have in the real estate business by picking up the phone and setting an appointment. And one of the things that I talked about in that plan for the month of May was gamify appointment setting. And, how long does it typically take you to set an appointment? Because really what we've got to do is we've got to go out and focus on setting one appointment. Not on how many that let's say we need 5 for the week. I don't want you focused on that. I want you to focus on setting one appointment. And then I want you to analyze, how'd you do that? How long did it take you? How many calls? What was your message? Who did you call? And then I want you to gamify it and see how you can beat it. All right. If it took you 10 calls to set an appointment, see if you can set the next one in 9. And if we can just stay focused on that one thing, our problems will really be solved. Because getting in front of people right now, this is about the motivated people, think about it. Who's going to be willing to meet with you on a Zoom call like this if they're not pretty serious about buying or selling real estate? There's a lot of other things I'd rather do than waste time talking to a real estate agent, right? So we just got to get good at that. And number one in last month's plan was make sure you have a good virtual presentation. So don't take it for granted that you can just change it from the way things were to today and do it virtually. You got to talk about COVID. You got to talk about, if you're talking to buyers, what's the buyer protection plan look like? Or what's the buyer stimulus plan look like today for buying a house? What does the seller protection plan? What's the guide to selling houses in COVID-19 look like? I mean, that will get you appointments, and it will also win you clients, right? So everything, no matter how in the weeds you get on this thing, if you'll just go set one appointment a day, your troubles will start to fade.
Andy, can I share a story?
Sure.
I recently met with clients who have been long-term clients of mine since 2010, and I've done multiple transactions with their entire family. And right when COVID started, it was a little before Easter time, and I had delivered chocolate bunnies to a lot of my clients who had younger children. And of course, that was, one-on-one, and we stayed at the social distancing. And they have recently grown their family with their second child in November, and they are actually, they're busting at the seams in their current home. So we were talking, and she is interested in a community that's around the corner from her, about a mile away. And so I had suggested that we put them on a criteria search to let them know what was going on in their community as well as that other community. And there was a home that came on the market on April the 9th, and we saw it shortly thereafter. We're already under contract on that home, scheduled to close on June 15th. And I have listed and already gotten their current home, which they're busting at the seams, under contract. And we're scheduled to close on that one back to back on the 15th of June. And they're just over the moon.
I love that. That sounds like a hashtag GLG Windemic right there. I like
Well,
that.
it's all about staying in relationship and loving on your clients and just letting them know that you are always there as a source of knowledge and expertise. And, the interest rates are so incredibly low right now, and there's no better time. And I think, versus trying to conquer the mountain, I think for me, I prefer to do it a little bit more slowly and methodically, and one step at a time versus trying to climb the mountain in a day.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's all we got, one day at a time. A lot of people have been asking me, like, what am I reading right now? There's this book called Shift that I've been reading. It's pretty good. If y'all haven't read that, that's a really good one. I'm almost finished with The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. And I have been very slowly reading Practicing the Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And, what I love about the Power of Now book is all we have is right now. I mean, that is the only thing that we have. And if we have the wherewithal that we can, I talked about this with Adam Hergenrother briefly whenever we had our discussion. If we have the ability to actually observe what we're doing and see all of the wasteful things that we do, not wasteful in terms of money, but wasteful in terms of time, or the things that we do that actually take us away from the things that we really want. If we have the wherewithal that we could actually pull ourselves out of our body and observe some of our behavior, it would help us change a lot faster. So this idea of self-awareness, some people call it enlightenment, but I think that's kind of too airy-fairy for me. But this just self-awareness around what am I doing? Am I in neutral? Am I going backwards? Am I going forwards? And what are the habits, right, that are making me right now? And by the way, I think we're all developing some good ones, and I think we're all developing some bad ones, and it would be impossible not to, sometimes develop some bad ones. But having the self-awareness around it just helps us change that.
It is complicated.
Right. So, couple additional questions, because when I take notes, I usually write them in the forms of questions, because they're questions for me to ask, because they, leaders help people think, right? And so when I take notes, I like for people to make me think. So one of the questions that I got out of what Gary was saying is, how do we use our value to bludgeon the competition? Now, I don't know if y'all have ever heard Gary talk like this, but when he gets ultra competitive, I get going. I love that side of Gary, because I mean, we're the largest and strongest real estate company in the world. And quite frankly, I don't think we all act like that most of the time. I don't think we really believe that sometimes. We see it on paper, but we have so much value in this company you could take the value, the things that you learn as a realtor, and you could teach that to your database. Like principles you're going to learn in bold, if you haven't already taken bold and learned, I mean, there's a reason why you're taking it for the, second or third or 10th time, right? Because you got something out of it. If you just take some of those principles and talk to people in your database about that, and help them grow in their industry, and provide value, like all this value that we have as a company is not just valuable in the real estate space. And I use the story of my good friend Jerry Gobler, who owns the Buckhead Chick-fil-A. And one day he said, "Hey, I know you've got a lot of people in your leadership group. I'm really struggling with accountability and helping them get what they want. And, I'd love to talk to you about that. Do you have a good plan for that?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, a great plan for that. It's called 411, right?" And we sat down and had a beer, and I showed him my 411. I showed him how we use it as an effective tool to help people get what they want. He took it back to Chick-fil-A, and now Chick-fil-A uses the KW 411, right? So a perfect example of the value that we have. Like, guys, don't take it for granted. It really, it can help in every industry. What do we do to change the conversation in the market? I'm kind of moving more into my OP notes, by the way. I've got less of those, and I won't repeat some of the other stuff, but how are you changing the conversation in the market? A lot of this is sharing wins. A lot of this is your awareness around how many houses are being listed, how many houses are going under contract, and how many houses are selling, and communicating that out to your database, and control the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Control the conversation about, well, this is how houses are sold right now. We have to protect people, right? Rule number one, we have to put safety first. People will respect that. And then when they meet with the other agent and safety's not number one, they're going to be like, well, that seems like they just have, dollar signs in their eyes. It doesn't seem like they're really looking out for me. I love the questionnaires around, what's the typical days on, if you're interviewing agents, what are their typical days on market? The stats basically of how well do they know their business. And I would add to that, what's their COVID-19 response plan? So that now if they're interviewing somebody else and that person doesn't have it, you've already put some cloud of doubt into, perhaps this person isn't prepared for the situation. Oh, this is a good one. Be the company that would put you out of business. So in other words, think about your own business. What is the thing that if somebody else started doing it, that it would scare the heck out of you, that it would potentially put you out of business? And what do you need to do ethically? We're not going there, right? But what is that thing that, gosh, somebody, did this at a level 11, it would be very difficult for me to get my share of the business. And how do you start thinking? And again, back to this idea of reinvention, what do you do to get into action on that? When it comes to expenses, and this is the last thing I'll end on, then we can kind of open it up. But when it comes to expenses, I think we struggled a lot with asking for help, like, renegotiating expenses and whatnot. Maybe that was just me, and that was my insecurity around, well, I told somebody I was going to pay them this, and now, I'm asking for them to forgive that, or to reduce it in some form or fashion. And the reframe that Gary had that I thought was great, he said, what do you have to get for you to be okay? In other words, how do we create a win-win out of this? It's not that you have to lose in order for me to win. It's a give and a take, right? So when it comes time for you to renegotiate, let's say it's your photographer, right? Let's say it's your stager. Let's say whatever services you have in your business, and you had to renegotiate those. This is really about stabilizing expenses and making sure that your income matches expenses, right? So it could be a short-term solution, but I love that question about what do you have to get in order to be okay? And I'm not looking for anybody to like make a ton of money right now, but I don't want people to be damaged by it necessarily either. I want to be in partnership. This is, we talk about recessions exposing people. This is going to expose people's partnerships. This is going to expose like how much do people really care about you as a client, as a customer, and I'm really talking about vendors, right? So that's my perspective on it. What did you hear me saying, and what helped? Any ahas?
Andy, they're all so quiet. Why is everybody so quiet?
Hey,
Andy.
Oh, go ahead, Alicia.
I like the last aha that you said, be the business that how'd you say that? Be the company that would put you out of business.
Yeah.
It's a real strong motivator, and it really does make you really sit back and do some introspection of where you're at in your business and where you should be or want to be. So that was a really big aha for me. That's, there's so many. You said a lot of things that were absolutely fabulous. I took a lot of help. The modeling, the training, it was all really good, very helpful.
Well, in the last recession, we put together models and started following models that made us an MREA team. And there will be teams or businesses that come out of this that get serious about models and will become MREA teams. It will happen.
I've got one.
Yeah.
Okay, I liked gamify setting an appointment and then looking back and seeing how you could beat it. And if you could observe yourself and how much time you're wasting, I would love to see how much time I waste.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I gamify when I cap, right? So I remember in the early days, it'd take me 6 months to cap. It's like, all right, next year, let's cap in 3 months. All right, now let's cap in a month and a half. Hey, what would it take to cap in a week, right? Yeah, I like playing games. Yeah, Andrea, go ahead.
I think being the market of the moment and that light of positivity, and also, challenging other agents relative to what is their COVID strategy in helping clients.
Yes. Anybody else?
Andy, it's Gemma.
Hey,
I
Gemma.
liked what you said about pushing your advantages. What is my superpower? Because we're not all the same, and our different ages. I'm up there. Dealing with, I have a lot of patience. So when I deal with young people, first-time home buyers, I explain the whole process, and I think that helps a lot. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, lean into that. Tell that story more. Here's how I behave, and here's how that would be a benefit or a value to you.
Question, Andy?
Yeah, Nicole.
On the superpower, should that come out in your value proposition statement?
Yep.
Okay.
I love that. If you're struggling with that, you should probably go to StrengthsFinder if you haven't taken that yet. And just identify what those strengths are. We know it's a lot easier to run a play with our strengths than it is to continue to work and basically have hope that we'll develop these poor skills into more favorable skills. I don't like that plan. I think we should identify what it is we do well and do more of it.
Hey, Andy, another thing that I really like that you said is don't be anchored in the past. That was really helpful because when you do, as we started this shift, one of the things that was challenging was trying to move forward because you expected things to be the way that they should continuously be. And now that we're in the shift, some people got it a lot quicker than others. So now you really have to change your mindset and your behavior has to follow.
Yep. Yeah. The Peters Company has bound 44 deals. We bound one yesterday, 44 deals in like 50 days, with constant communication around what are we doing? How do we stay afloat? How do we be smart? How do we adapt? All of what I'm telling you is what we're doing.
Yeah, that's been very helpful. Thanks.
Andy,
Absolutely.
it's Janice Edmond.
Hey,
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, I came into this at about 20 minutes into it. Sorry, but you were in the emergency room analogy. Are you putting, so I don't know if you're going to publish any of the slides or bullet points.
It's chicken scratch. It's very
So
poor writing.
I want you to know your chicken scratch is incredibly informative, but I don't know what your intention was for this, but it wasn't just informative. This to me was really motivational.
Good.
Like, I don't know, you didn't present it like you were a motivational speaker on a stage, but all of this info, one by one piece, is really hugely motivational because it's so good. The material is so good, and so you can latch onto almost everything you said. I wrote down is something you can latch onto. My personal holdback thing is technology and functioning with just because I'm in the generation of interfacing with the computer and sending it is harder for me. And so that's a block for me. A lot of times I have the thoughts, the ideas, the motivation, and then I can't execute because I'm held back in technology, or that's how I feel. Anyway, I feel like I need to get someone to do that for me. But just thank you because this is all great info.
Well, that's sweet. I appreciate that. The thing that holds you back on technology was still the same thing that was holding me back from getting into command, right? Because it was something new. I was comfortable doing things the way I was doing it. I wasn't comfortable paying almost $1,000 a month, but I knew how my platform worked. I knew how my systems worked. And so it was uncomfortable for me to go to command. Like, it was not like, it hasn't been some walk in the park for me or our team. And they would tell you that. They wouldn't sugarcoat it for you. Our business is probably a little more complicated than a single agent's business, so that throws another ripple on it. However, there's no reason, if you're a single agent or a small team, and as we're demonstrating, even a big team, there's no reason why you can't take advantage of this. So back to this idea of watching every penny, I think you gotta go after the technology side. So in closing, by a show of hands, how many people are in bold at 2:00? Good. So I'll just give you guys some perspective on bold.
Hard to see hands in the blacked out people.
Yeah, it's hard to see those people's hands. I'll just take your word for it that most of these people are going to be on it. So most regions within Keller Williams, the number one region for bold participation yesterday was the Carolinas. I understand Southeast region has come up and actually knocked them out of first place, which I'm proud of. But number one was like a little over 30%. And as of this morning, Aubrey, maybe you can help me with this math, but I think we were we were approaching 400 within GLG. Now, we have about 1,000 agents. So that means about 40% of our people are in bold. And I'm telling you, all the stuff that we talk about getting into action and getting business right now is the stuff that you're going to get in bold. And so I applaud you for getting into it. By the way, it didn't cost you anything. We're paying for that because all of you are going to do a deal once you graduate. I'm not worried about that. But that is how important we feel like it is. That's actually our commitment to you guys, is to help you get into action and make more money. So we'll keep you up to date. I'll do one of these every month. It looks like we're going to be doing masterminds with Gary for a couple hours every month. So I'm always happy to share this with you if this is a format that you guys like. I think this might be perhaps more effective than me just sharing my notes with you.
I like it. Yes, please.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you guys. Thanks for being here. And I look forward to doing bold with you guys. I got my bold t-shirt on today. Excited about that. I'm gonna cast it onto the big screen and watch it from the comfort of my couch. It's gonna be fantastic. All right, y'all. Have a great day. Talk soon.
Thank you, Andy.
See you
Thanks,
guys
Andy.
at 2 o'clock.
See you there.
Thanks.